Capitalism under attack. Protests against our money-making ways sparking violence at an economic summit in Pittsburgh. While over at the UN, America's enemies had a good time ripping our way of life. But Gary B., you say we asked for this?
Absolutely, Brenda, and here's the problem. It all starts right with our commander-in-chief. I maintain that Obama is the most anti-capitalistic, anti-business president we've ever had. And it's not just my gut feel. You know, I pulled out some little tidbits here. 3 weeks after he took office, he said only government has the resources to jolt our economy. He thinks the government can teach the private sector lessons in efficiency. Remember when he said the doctors that ordered up, extra tests for patients, they have a business mentality, as if that's a bad thing. Remember he said the people that wanted their money out of Chrysler, they were the speculators, and they refused to sacrifice. You know, Brenda, at the bottom line, you look through his cabinet, he does not have one person in his cabinet who has ever hired or fired workers, who's an entrepreneur, that's a business person. They're all academic and politicians. They understand nothing about business, and they hate business, to be quite frank.
So Gary B., Mark, Gary B. is saying the president should not be apologizing for America's way of life. But you think there is room for an apology?
Well, I don't think he's apologizing for it. I think what he's doing is making an observation that people can see. You don't need President Obama to go around the world to see that global capitalism is having some problems right now. You don't have to look at a press conference to know that the poorest people in the globe are suffering and catching more hell now than ever. You look at universal health care. You look at the lack of living wages. You look at sweatshop labor around the globe. This is all an extension of global capitalism and wealth building. This is what happens. So people aren't critiquing capitalism. They're critiquing unregulated, unfettered capitalism.
I guess, Toby, we could look at all the successfully run communist countries to really get a sense of how the alternatives
You're right, but I mean, look at the most successful, again, just pure math, system right now is China. And, you know, it's basically communism with a new form of capitalism thrown in there. I don't see anybody complaining, about China's, 1.5 billion or 1 billion people still, earning $1 a month. I don't see, them attacking China-based communism. But when we have a recession and really almost a depression, we're open for shots. It would just be nice if those shots weren't coming from the White House.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm getting word that Gary B., you're absolutely, you don't even know what to say.
I am absolutely speechless. And honestly, Mark, for an academic and a person I admire, to pin the world's problems on capitalism is just, it's shocking to me. You're talking about a country here that has grown quicker, more prosperous, more educated, made more advances than any combination of countries in the world based on one thing: capitalism. My gosh, and you look at every other country that has dug itself out from the bottom, it's based when they move to capitalism. Even China has become more capitalistic, and that's why we're worried about them, for crying out loud. So what you're saying makes absolutely zero sense.
Well,
I don't understand it on any perspective.
Because what you've done is made a straw argument. You all are essentially saying that communism doesn't work, and therefore capitalism does work. And what I'm saying is
that's not what we're...
No, we're saying that capitalism works because the other systems have failed, is actually what we're saying.
No, but what I'm saying is that capitalism needs regulation. These people are not critiquing capitalism as such. What they're saying is that unfettered capital, the governments need to regulate markets.
Okay.
And if you let corporations go unprotected...
Would you run the Ahmadinejad tape for him?
Yeah, no, I know.
That's another straw man. No one's defending Ahmadinejad. I'm saying the capitalism...
Eric, go ahead.
Look, these G20 protesters shouldn't be protesting. They should be celebrating, because capitalism is dying, and it's dying from here. Look what we have. We have your president, our president, the one you voted for, not necessarily the one I voted for. Here's what he's proposing: free health care. He wants to subsidize your home. He'll give you $8 grand and maybe 15 grand, and it'll also make the car you want to buy cheaper too. That's not free market. That's not capitalism. It's dying. They should be throwing up fireworks instead of Molotov cocktails.
Okay, Pat, let me get you in here. Weigh in.
Well, it's pretty simple. Capitalism is the absolute worst form in the world way to organize an economic system. except for everything else we've ever tried. It is flawed and problematic, but we haven't figured out a better way to do anything. And those who are saying capitalism is at fault for the recent debacle are really laying the blame at the feet of the structure, when the blame is really quite varied. You can lay the blame at the feet of Bernanke and Greenspan for keeping rates too low too long, the U.S. for overemphasizing home ownership, the regulators for under-regulating the banking system, but it is not the fault of the system itself.
But so it's not perfect, but it is. All right, thanks, guys. Uncle Sam lending a company Al Gore is behind a